Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. Some northern Indian states could receive rainfall during the next 4 to 5 days, but monsoon activity could be subdued in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra's interiors, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana in the next 3 to 4 days, the IMD said on Sunday. After recording above normal rains between July 6th and July 11th, monsoon appears to be slowing down, sparking concerns in the agriculture sector, according to experts. Overall, rainfall deficiency in the country till Sunday was 12.5% over the long period average, an improvement from June's 33%, the highest deficiency in June in 4 years. The sluggish monsoon has impacted the sowing of summer crops. But in northeastern India, floods have caused widespread damage. The devastating flood situation across Assam has shown no signs of improvement as parts of the state continue to be submerged for days now, forcing lakhs to flee for safety. Heavy rains and floods have also wreaked havoc in Bihar. According to disaster management officials, at least 9 districts in the state have been hit with floods and over 13 people have lost their lives. While some states are facing floods, other states are looking at a water crisis. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the floods and linking of rivers to deal with our water woes. Joining me on the program today are R.K. Sinha, Member, River Management Central Water Commission; Nitin Desai, Chairman, the Energy and Resources Institute; Tajamul Haq, former Chairman, CACP; and also with us on the program, Aman Agarwal, Director, Indian Institute of Finance. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Desai, I'd like to begin the program with you. You know, there's a peculiar situation that we are looking at. On the one hand, you have certain parts of the country, which are flooded. On the other hand, you have certain parts of the country which are facing a major water problem. How do we deal with this issue? What's the best way forward?
The idea that somehow river linking would allow us to cope with floods in the northeast and shortage of water in the Deccan is a very misleading one. The fact is these floods come at a time when really in most parts of the country you are not short of water. You have to hold that water somewhere if you want to really use it in the dry season in other parts of the country. Second, the amounts flowing in a very short period of time around the Brahmaputra and some of the rivers which join the Ganga is so huge that I think it's totally impractical to think that one can somehow impound that and use it later. I think this is a very strange idea which has been talked about for decades and has never really been implemented. River linking on a smaller scale between rivers which are close by, etc., is a different story. And that could be looked at on a case-by-case basis. But to look at river linking as the answer to the problem of floods and water shortages is, I think, quite misleading.
Okay, all right. R.K. Sinha, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. As far as river linking is concerned, like Nitin Desai just pointed out, it's not something new. It's an idea that has been mooted a long time ago. We are still looking at trying to implement this and trying to, start off this particular project. How successful do you see it being, and also how can it address some of our water problems? Can it address our water problems?
First of all, river linking in the country is seen by the National Development Water Agency, a Government of India enterprises under the Ministry of Water Resources. This is, as it was said, it is a long idea, but somehow due to some political concerns and the other environmental issues, we are not able to the pace which was supposed to be there. Recently, as we are aware, Ken-Betwa link, which was the number 1 in the priority, and just before to be signed the MOU, there was something at the ground which could not take up. So this is a long mission of our Honorable Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, but somehow the ministry is trying and we are trying very hard to do the needful. Let us hope for the best, and I think some forward-looking steps I think we are going to take in this direction. So this is the ministry's perspective. Obviously, this is a very good perspective. Every problem, some flood cushion is also there. It will cater to the problem. Somewhere you have the water scarcity, another you have the plenty of water. So those all kind of rationales have been taken into the consideration.
Okay. Tajamul Haq, let me bring you to the picture now. Let's talk about the feasibility of a project like this. How feasible is, is the river linking project? Are we too ambitious about the project?
I think in some of the cases, it seems, I think we are ambitious. But in some cases, I think the feasibility, so far, whatever feasibility study has been conducted, I think it looks feasible. But still, I think there are issues in the sense, first of all, the financial issues, the amount of money that will be required to connect various projects, like currently the 14 of the peninsular projects and then also some Himalayan projects. I think around 30 big projects have been identified under their perspective plan. And if we have to complete all these, it means billions and billions and billions of dollars. First of all, whether the government can really afford it on its own, or even if some international borrowings and other sources of funding is there, even then whether it is advisable at this point of time when there are some other priorities. This is one. Second thing is that so far the main problems were from two sides. One was environmental side, like it has a huge fear that it will cause a lot of denudation, some submergence of various areas, a lot of biodiversity will be lost and things like that. So environmental concerns were very huge from all angles. Second was that whether the estates which will be affected, or where these rivers get interconnected, so whether they will agree or agree to see that the sharing of the water will be equal or not really affecting them adversely and things like that. And based on some past experience also, you have seen the Kaveri water issue and things like that. So even in the case of Ken Batua kind of project between UP and MP, this is at a very high advanced stage, I should say. All the feasibility studies have been completed. But then even some of the cases, some of the clearances have been done, because it needs forest clearance, it needs your environmental clearance, it needs wildlife clearance, it needs other clearance from the Tribal Affairs Ministry and so on and so forth. So all these procedural problems are there. But in some of the cases, I personally feel that where the cost is not so much and there is minimal of this kind of conflict or contradictions, I think this can be tested. At least 2-3 some projects can be piloted and see how it is impacting in terms of flood control, in terms of drought mitigation, or in drought prone areas you are able to deliver water, because our Prime Minister has been saying from the very day one that har khet ko pani or har ghar ko safe drinking water now. Now if that is your mission, then you have to find all sources of water. So whether it is water conservation, rainwater harvesting, water conservation or water management in the high rainfall area. I mean, you see the pity of it, like in Bihar, every year you get some areas flooded and some areas having drought. The Gaya, Jahanabad areas, all the time about 10% of area is highly drought prone and about 40% area is highly flood prone. Right. Every year you get this. And similarly, overall in the country as such, you have seen for the last 4-5 years that mostly we have either flood affected areas or drought affected areas. So in order to address this issue, you have to have all integrated management system. In some places you have to have water conservation, watershed development schemes, by way of which you can conserve water and then deliver it to the needy plants, animals and people.
Absolutely.
And in some places, like in high water rainfall areas like Bihar, Assam and some parts of West Bengal also, and some parts of Orissa. So you will get this kind of situation. So here it is more important to have water management, but then interlinking of some rivers. I am not talking about Brahmaputra and Ganga. It is a huge kind of mission, but at least some of the local rivers, right. Gandak, Kosi and things like that can be easily interlinked without much problem.
We should look at it in a localized and on a pilot project first, and then see how it can be expanded to the larger picture, is what you are suggesting. Aman Agarwal, let me bring you into the picture now. Dr. Tajamul Haq has raised several, very important issues. We'll try and address a few of them over the next 10 minutes or so. Let's talk about the issue that he raised about economic feasibility of a river linking kind of a project. How economically feasible is it, and is it something that we can take on at this point in time?
I think very critical points, Frank, have been raised in the debate in the last few minutes. You see, there are two critical components of the whole system. One is the water, which is drinking water, which needs to reach every citizen of this country, and which is the mandate of the new ministry, which has been created as a pilot project ministry, which has been taken into account. The second component is actually the water terrains being properly flushing through the country, so that there can be reduction in droughts, there can be reduction in floods, and could benefit the agriculture at the end of the day. So the thing is that we have already, I think some points have been laid out, but the important issue before us here is that do we have the mechanism, the economic resources? Yes, we do have the mechanism, as well as we have the economic resources to go about doing it. I think we are very well aware of the fact that we initially were the ones who were establishing hydro dams for a large number of countries around the globe, including some of our neighboring nations. And that would not only produce electricity, but also help the reduction of floods which takes place because of them. The second thing which is there is, and I remember President Dr. Abdul Kalam Azad, when he was on his way between being a scientist to becoming the president of this country, he had written a couple of books and articles where he talked about the way some of the river basins could be merged to benefit the agriculturists and reduce the impact. I also remember when I was working with the World Bank about 18-19 years back, I did a project for them for extending crop insurance into a weather derivative instrument, and I at that time studied in depth the thing called water tables. Water tables are a measure which can actually be utilized by countries, and in fact in a country like India, over 100 years we have been calibrating and monitoring water tables. That can be a very good mechanism to actually look at and see whether a region is going to have floods or droughts coming forth, because they don't get influenced over a day or two. They take time before the water tables change, but under the earth crust, we come to know whether they are changing or not. That can be a good indicator for governments to take about regressive structures. Also, we saw in case of Israel, a country which actually has very little water, real drinking water, they have developed very economical means, productive means, and fortunately our Prime Minister has very good relations with Israel in the last 4 or 5 years in specific, and as a result that cooperation can get better going forward, wherein we can actually adopt some of this technology, which is a very low cost technology, to go about recycling the water which we utilize. In fact, in Israel, when I was there to address at the World Bank IMF conference way back in 2003-04 at the Ben Gurion University, I remember there they told me that the water which I use for drinking, which goes through the drains, gets utilized for washing as well as for bathing. Then the same water is actually recycled by the hotel or a home for the usage of toiletries, and then the water which goes through the toiletries actually gets utilized, cleaned, and gets utilized and is drained into a pipe which is used for agriculture. So when there can be 4 different cyclings and usage of the same water because there is a resource lackage there, why can't we adopt? And it's very cost effective. So when you talk of economics, yes, it is possible. It is not only possible at a national level, but also at a micro level. I think it's a question of now moving towards the well-being of the people, which the government has been highlighting.
Absolutely. So you're propagating technology really going forward, and dealing with this issue with the use of technology is what you're suggesting. Let me take these points that you raised to the others as well. One important point that was raised, Mr. Nitin Desai, is the fact that, the environment issues that river linking really causes. Is that a justified reason? Do you believe that that is going to be a problem area and that should be looked at as well?
Yes, of course it is, because otherwise why would we raise, that issue is considered relevant not just for projects which link rivers, but it is considered for any project, whether even if it's a small project. What we need is a coherent view of land and water, and where land is also looked at in its totality for all its uses. Its uses for habitations, its uses for agriculture, its uses as a forest, and anything else. It has to be an integrated. What I would say is this: the message that comes across is that you must have coherent planning at a local level, identifying what demands are, where they could be met from. You have to go beyond that to connect the local levels which are already connected in a river basin. One of our great problems is we really don't have a river basin plan anywhere. Because the rivers run through so many states, getting the states together on a coherent river valley plan is something which we have been which has not been done. Somebody mentioned water tables, the thing of aquifers. So we know really what is there, and who are the people who share this aquifer, how can they be brought together. What I'm suggesting is that really instead of starting from a solution, start from the problem at a local level and then work from that towards a solution. It is possible. Involves in some cases connecting river basins in some form, not on the very grand scale sometimes talked of getting all the Brahmaputra floods and bringing it to the south and that type of stuff. That would be unrealistic, and it is unbelievably expensive and not necessarily when you want it. The floods come in the monsoon, when you really need water in the dry season. Your real challenge is ask yourself, what will I do in this area in the dry season? And work from that backwards. Second, start factoring in variability. We've always had highly variable rainfall patterns. They're likely to become even more variable with climate change. So start building in contingencies and variabilities into your planning. And this is the way I think we should proceed. The emphasis is correct, but I believe the method should start from the local, build up to aquifers and river basins.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to take the point that you're making forward. R.K. Sinha, at the localized level, do we have any pilot projects? Do we have any success stories that tell us that this is the best way that we should go forward? Let's not talk about gigantic plans and mega money spending plans is what the other panelists are suggesting, but let's build up from the local level and then take it on the large scale.
First of all, reacting to the issue from the very basics. Number one, river basin management plans are very much under the active consideration of the present government, in which we are to see each river basins very holistic and comprehensively. This is the need which is being felt since very long time. Number two, there is one issue is a problem, other issue is the challenge. I feel very strongly that environment is one issue definitely everybody of the citizen of the country is equally, we should be concerned about that. We have at the center the proper ministry at this level. The agency which I had just referring to my talk in the initial NWDA probably has undertaken every aspect into the consideration. Next point is the interlinking of the rivers in the south as well as other parts of the country has been undertaken in the past. Those are going on well. Next is in the Bihar intralinking project, means the river basins within the same states, they have prepared the plan. But somehow, as we are aware, which in the country the one problem had been that our thinking is not very rapidly translating into the progress. So this has been remained our concern. I very much would like to respect the environmental issues, but this is not a new area we are entering into. Next issue is the rainfall, which is the main source of the water on the earth planet where we are, all the human beings, cattle, birds are all surviving. Point is the variability is very much with respect to the space and time. So even at the Bihar level, for example, it was referred to every year larger number of districts are the flood prone, and at the same time other parts are facing the drought situation. Marathwada, today's newspaper, we have seen that 0.1% is the storage in that area, and whether in the other portion of the region, that is the central Maharashtra and the Konkan region, you have the plenty of the rainfall. So issue is that even a domain of the state which is having one constitutional identity, situation is different because of the variety of the water, the space and time. So technically, I feel with the due respect to the environmental issue and the cost, I think we can very much take the issue forward, but at the same time, with the basin state, the crucial issue remains at the moment that the political convergibility of the two states to bring it forward.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
nation becomes very important. Today we have formed the Jal Shakti Ministry. All the stakeholder ministries are acting separately. So this is after the Swachhta mission of the government, this is the next vision, highly important. And I feel unless and until we try to resolve the supply based situation, we cannot meet the demand. So I look on the interconnectivity of the river basin in this manner, as I said.
Right. All right. So that having been said, Tajamul Haq, so should we focus now going forward on water management rather than looking at, something else? Because if we do it from a localized level, if every person, every household does it, and from there on we take it upwards, it's something that is going to address this particular problem.
I think this is a very important thing that needs to be done at this stage. Even the Prime Minister has been saying for quite some time now about it, water conservation. In fact, there is going to be a national mission on water conservation in the next few years. I think this will be implemented. The idea is that there are several things that can be done. One, Mr. Aman said, recycling water for integrated use. I think this is certainly going to help, and already we have experimented this even internally in several places that this is working well. But then this technology has to be propagated further and people have to be made aware of it. This is one. Second thing is that in the arid and semi-arid regions where mostly you find a situation where there is drought proneness. I think drought comes very frequently, particularly in the last 1 or 2 decades we are seeing this kind of situation. So I think there it is basically rainwater harvesting and check dam kind of things, and then you create an area where you can able to conserve your water, and then the water table goes up, and then you can take some economic activities and also provide water for drinking purposes and all that. This is one. But in the context of eastern India particularly, as I said, Bihar, Bengal, Assam and Odisha, Assam much more so, every year you find this kind of flood situation, but then there it involves also international kind of issues. Second thing is that when I said financially whether these big projects, mega projects are feasible or not, I have still my doubt, because the cost is huge, economic gains are there enormous, but the point is immediately we need some money, and whether the amount of money that we need for doing implementing this interlinking of rivers is going to forthcome. Idea is very good. Even some of the environmental concerns can be addressed through proper measures, mitigation measures. Like if deforestation is taking place, you can also go for afforestation in the neighborhood. Similarly, there are other things which can be, but cost-wise it is going to be very huge. This is my main concern. And in some places, for some of these projects, you find that you have to lift water. It is not just connecting. You have to lift water up to 160 or 200 meters. So that itself is a big challenge and big cost involved. You need technology. So all these things have, anyway, I think if the government wants it, if we can go to Chandrayaan, we can also do this.
Right.
But we must try to mobilize our resources, efforts, technology, and all that we need to do.
Absolutely. So that having been said, Aman Agarwal, so are there any best practices that we can utilize here? You of course brought up the the examples of Israel, but as far as river linking is concerned, the Chinese have done it and they've shown the way. But is that something that we can implement?
Yes, as I pointed out, not only the hydro projects and the dams and the river linking is possible. It's been done by China and a couple of other neighboring countries. But an important component which we saw in the budget in this year as well as last year in February and even earlier was the fact that there has been specific allocation for waterway usages. A technology which has been the birth of civilization on Earth was the way of water being utilized for transportation and goods and services and things like that. That is one of the commercial applications where you can actually go about using those ways which are less polluting environment and more friendly, plus the fact that it raises capital which could be actually utilized further on for the purpose of water conservation itself. Now, so these are some of the very creative ways which can actually go about being done. Another thing which we saw was, in any case, deindustrialization in certain zones. We saw in London where they actually took off all industries, and last 15-20 years the water tables in London have been rising at almost a meter a year. Now that is something which in fact has become a worry for a city like London. But otherwise, it is a clear indication that industrialization does have certain costs. And so we need to look at that. We need to again go back to forestation as well as create an appropriate balance of industries and human life so that we can have an appropriate distribution of people, and that does not allow that water table to go down to that level, which can create problem for us. So there are practical solutions to it, and there is a lot of money. Fortunately, the United Nations SDG goals plus the FAA reports and various other activities in conjunction with what Government of India and Prime Minister Modi has been talking about are a clear indication of the fact that the focus is there in terms of reaping benefits of people's livelihood to go up with the better and good quality of water being available to people and the resources, whether it is internationally or within the country, whether it is the private equity which is wanting to come in. There are a large number of them who are wanting to seep in from all over the world. And the fact that we receive currently the largest FDIs in the world, about $6 billion come to us every month, about $1 billion reinvest with $5 billion fresh equity. A large chunk of it is still waiting to come, specifically for water drain and ecological system surveys from international agencies and international organizations wanting to pour in work. So there are ways and means. It's only a question of will. Unfortunately, we
seem to have lost the line there with Aman Agarwal, but it's time to get one last quick concluding remark in from you. Mr. Desai, what's the best way forward?
I would say the best way forward is to look at water as a strategic resource for development. Get water usage and drainage right at a local level. You will get to many other things right, including land use, settlement patterns, social equity, and that particular message, the strategic role of sensible water planning applies even at a broader level. So I would say start treating water resources not in isolation, but as a strategic point of intervention for sustainable development.
Okay, very quick concluding remark from you, R.K. Sinha.
Water management has been, I will say, this is a very low-hanging fruit, but the many kind of measures you require, short-term measures, long-term measures, meaning there will interlinking of the river, long-term measures. The Jal Shakti Ministry has undertaken in the 200 and plus number of blocks in the country, the central team of the state and the Central Water Commission, state engineers, they are doing the needful in the area. I personally feel till now where there is any problem in the any sector, you just suck the groundwater. So any one issue will not work in this country. I feel that desalination of water, reuse of wastewater, and then nowadays we are also saying that even at the rural area where we are probably supplying 40 to 50 LPCD of the water, so where the treatment is not very costly, so government is also going for those measures.
Right.
In addition to that, we also need the reservoirs in the country, because unless and until you have the storage for the lean period, I think the agriculture sector, which is the 80% water user of the water in the country, we can't take the country to the desired level, to the order of the 2050 requirement or so on. So we require a mix of everything.
Sure.
Last but not the least, the groundwater recharge cannot be done everywhere as per our will. Quantum is limited and place is also restricted by the rock formation in the peninsular India and southeast southern India, so on, so on. So there are many challenges we have to face it, and very technologically we have to proceed.
All right.
So putting aside all the concern which are on the border, we have to move very scientifically, taking all the aspects into the concern.
Okay, move forward scientifically and also start at the local level and then take it upwards is what the panelists are suggesting. They are also suggesting have an integrated and holistic approach so that we have an appropriate balance. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.